What is going on, everybody? Zura here. It is 1:45 a.m. here locally in Dallas, Texas. And the reason I am recording a video at this time is because I played an over-the-board chess tournament that finished not too long ago. 5 games, 15-minute time control, and I was starting rank number 4. First, Jeffrey Xiong, former 2700 player. Number 2, Andy Woodward, local hero, I would say, recently crowned Grandmaster, record holder of youngest Grandmaster in the world, not too long ago, by the way. Number 3 was International Master Craig Hilby, my former teammate actually at University of Texas at Dallas. All right, let's jump into the games and see what happened. Now, if you do find some of these games instructive, or you like the games, or you appreciate the dedication of recording this around this time. By the way, I'm very proud. This is the first time, because usually after playing the chess tournament, you feel like not wanting to do anything. So I definitely have high respect for creators that are able to go that extra miles after playing very tiresome tournaments. All right, now let's jump into here game 3. All right, I won first game against very tenacious 1200 player. Second round, I played another very solid player who I was able to get some initiative against in Queen's Indian opening with black, and later on he was not able to stop my kingside attack. And in round 3, I got to face none other than Nelson Lopez AKA ChessVibes. Huge respect to Nelson for what he has accomplished with his content creation and teachings and courses and all of it, and for growing the game. All right, let's see what happened in our game. All right, I start the game with d4. He goes b6. Now, I could have continued here with e4, but for some reason I felt like playing in the style of Queen's Indian positions here. So continue with c4. He goes bishop b7. I go knight to c3. He goes knight to f6. I guess the only different continuation here is f5. If they try to go f5, knight f6, and play this Dutch kind of situation. But I think even in there, white can try to go knight f3, d5 relatively fast. Another case would be here, double fianchetto. But he chooses to transpose into Queen's Indian. Now, after e6, we have Queen's Indian on the board. And now white has choices to go bishop g5, get the bishop outside of the pawn chain. Another one would be, I guess, e3. Also, g3 is always a choice. And a3, Petrosian variation. That's what I chose to continue with. He goes d5. And now, again, white has here a few moves, getting the bishop out, e3, but I chose queen to c2. Queen c2 aims to capture on d5 next, and if black captures with the knight, then white will want to answer it with e4. He goes knight to b d7. I believe bishop e7 is the main move here, leaving options open for black here, whether they want to capture on d5 with the knight or with the pawn. Right, but he switches up the move order here, and I believe after here taking with the knight would not make that much sense, because I can take with the knight back. I believe now if you take with the bishop, then e4 comes with the tempo. If you capture it with the pawn, then I can go bishop to g5. Well, if you play f6, I believe this diagonal is going to be weak. Then here g3, bishop to h3, or g3 h4, bishop h3. Strong play for white. Now, after bishop g5, what if he moves away, right? Apparently the computer is suggesting doing the same thing, g3 here and going bishop h3. I like that idea a lot too. 95 here, immediately putting the pressure on the black's position. So he captures back with e d5. I go bishop to f4, and here was the critical moment of the game. I think he played quite fast, rook c8, and 15-minute games is a rapid time control. It's a fast game, but not too fast. You can still exploit some inaccuracies in the opening. So I was going to play g3 quite fast here to continue with bishop h3, but having played these positions with both sides, I've played these positions with black a lot too, Queen's Indian systems. I have always been concerned of allowing knight b5 here and losing the game immediately. So when you play it over and over, then you get used to including a6 in these positions, not allowing knight b5. And I think, well, not that I think actually, I noticed that during the game that rook c8 now is a mistake because it allows knight b5, and both pawns, c7 and a7 pawns, are hanging. If you play now, well, first of all, c7 is going to come with a check. Bishop c7 is also very strong, but knight takes c7 immediately makes this king very uncomfortable. Right? It's basically almost game over. Now, if you play c6 here, I can just capture a7, and since this bishop is controlling this diagonal, you cannot keep protecting this pawn. You have to move the rook away, and then I'll take that pawn as well. And there are no pins along the c file because I can simply bring the rook to defend the knight. All right, so he decides to play c5. Now I say thank you for the pawn. I'm gonna attack your rook. You have to go back to a8 to attack my knight, and I will return back to b5 to threaten knight c7 again. And you should go back rook to c8. If not, knight c7 again will come deadly. So basically what happened is we have the same position as 2 moves ago here after knight b5, but the a7 pawn is gone. Now a7 pawn being gone gives knight on b5 a very comfortable parking spot. So I decided to continue with my plan g3. He goes bishop e7 and then bishop to h3. Now this bishop is putting the pressure along h3 c8 diagonal again. Knight cannot move comfortably, and white has, I would say, almost decisive, but let's keep it modest, comfortable advantage. All right, bishop back, knight to c3. Now I was thinking of jumping to d6 to grab that dark square bishop. By the way, I could have done that on the previous move as well, here after bishop e7, for example. However, yes, I didn't like this prospect of knight e4, and now my bishop is under attack. I have to move this bishop away anyways, and I was not sure at all that that dark square bishop is more valuable piece than my knight on b5. My knight, actually, if you can kick it out, it's a very nice piece. All right, bishop h3, castle, castles, bishop to a6, knight returns back to c3. He captured on d5, knight takes d4, bishop to c5. Basically, white has a very comfortable here extra pawn, positionally also isolated pawn on d4 with the blocked blockading knight on d4 here. I played rook d1 to protect that knight. He continues with rook to e8, bringing the rook on the open file. Now, from here on, I actually do not remember moves very well. I believe this is how the game went. Queen a4, he moved the bishop back. Now I jumped on b5, knight goes to e4, and I definitely did not convert this as smoothly as this position may look. Game went down to the wire. We were both in a crazy time scramble, and I was able to checkmate him with 3 seconds left on the clock. 3 seconds. All right. Now, in online chess, that may be like, but over the board chess, when you go down to 3 seconds, it probably takes you 1 second to make a move. All right. So that is 3, maximum maybe 4 moves if you try really fast. So it was still very close. And luckily, I was able to get the win. Good game, Nelson. Now let's go to the next game where I played Andy Woodward. All right, Andy recently made GM and his current feeder rating is 2545, I believe, and his USCF is 2635. Very impressive, I would say. Let's see what happened in this game. Now, I don't have the full game here either. I have most interesting parts. He starts with d4, d5, c4, e6. Knight goes to f3. I play a6. A6 is Janovsky variation. I think an interesting try to White's choices here. Now, what does it want? The idea is a very straightforward one. Black wants to capture on c4 and play b5 to protect it. All right, that is the idea, as simple as that. Now, theoretically, there are a lot of moves here. Main one being c takes d5, but he chose a sideline, bishop to g5. I played bishop to e7, bishop captures e7, queen captures e7, and knight bd2. Basically not giving up this pawn on c4. I develop my kingside knight, and g3. He continues with the castle. I go short castle, bishop goes to g2, and here I decided to capture on c4. Or I think I actually captured first on c4 and then castle, but all right, this is gonna mess up my notation, so I'm just gonna leave it as it is. D takes c4, knight takes c4, and b5, pawn to b5. Now, I do not think this is the best way to play. Apparently, c5 is one way to go here, which should be close to equality after something like this. For example, rook to c1, queen back to e7, c takes d5, e takes d5, and black does have isolated pawn in the center, but that's the only weakness in the position, which is easily defendable here with the black pieces, and white will have to prove their advantage, basically. That's one way. b6 is also a very reasonable way to continue, I believe. Maybe castle, bishop b7, rook c1, and we have this position either a5. I was thinking maybe rook c8 here. Looks quite interesting. Knight e5, c5, and it says about 0.3 for white. All right, so very tiny bit advantage. Now dc4 gives white more flexibility in the center. He captures back on c4, and here I go b5. I think b5 is also not that accurate. I should probably continue with check, knight here, and then maybe rook d8. I was going to go for this. I'm not sure why I didn't. Here I can try maybe go something like this. But white still has the grip here. White's pawn structure is definitely more comfortable. So I continue with b5, knight goes to a5, and then c5. D takes c5, queen takes c5, and I was hoping to get this symmetrical position here. However, oh boy, I got grinded down. All right, now rook a7 here is a necessity because he wants to discover this bishop, on the long diagonal, so I need to get away from the x-ray. Goes rook c1, queen b6, and queen to d4, forcing queen trade. Bishop goes to d7, rook f d1, rook to e8. All right, and now he goes bishop b7 here. I play king f8. He goes rook c5. I believe here I played something like rook e7. But long story short, from here on we shuffled pieces a lot. We were both low on time. I would say probably under 5 minutes. So moves were made pretty fast. So it will be hard to put all the moves in. So we'll stop here. But he was a pawn up. The entire game, white was very comfortably better. That resulted in winning a pawn. However, in the time scramble, he was not able to convert it. And I grabbed that pawn back and then we both had 7 seconds on the clock and 3 versus 3 on one side of the board, so we agreed on a draw. That was round 4. So at this point, I am 3.5 out of 4 going into the 5th round. And in the 5th round, I got to play Craig Hilby. This game was actually very interesting. Craig is also an international master. I start with knight f3, he goes knight f6. Actually, Craig is one of those players who you got to play quite a bit, and you got to play against them same colors. I play white with him all the time. I don't know how is it possible. All right, g3, c5, bishop to g2, knight to c6. We have already opening on the board. He tries to go into symmetrical English, but I didn't play c4. So continued with short castle. He goes e5, declares the intention to take control of the center here. Now I have two choices. I can go c4, after which I believe his intention probably would be to go d5 and control the center. But I chose to transpose into King's Indian attack positions with e4. He goes d6. Now this pawn is hanging at the moment. However, capturing that pawn is not a good idea for a few reasons. One is rook e1, for example. I'm gonna put the pin along this diagonal. If you defend it, then I can simply play d3 to kick this knight away. But c4, computer says, is even stronger here because your center is going to be very loose, all right? And we have all this pressure, basically. So it should be very good for white. Now, in the worst case here, white can also just capture knight e5 and then simply take this knight on e4. So black plays d6. I played d3, g6, and bishop g5. I don't know why, but when he played g6 here early on, and apparently it's a computer's first suggestion, I wanted to get this knight out and then jump knight to d5. I don't know why are you in rush. Knight c3. It would be so unnatural to play something like h6. So if he wanted to block bishop g5, then he would probably block it immediately. Bishop g5 immediately was a little rushed probably. He goes bishop g7, I go knight c3, now h6, and going back here would mean that I didn't have my mind made, so I didn't want to back down basically, and decided to go with it. Capture on f6, then bring other knight now on d2, c4 potentially to e3, so it can jump to d5. Plays a6 here, preparing b5. Computer does not like this move, but in the game very quickly I responded with a4, and when he played rook b8, played knight to c4. He goes b5, captures, and I move my knight to e3, both ready to jump on d5. He plays knight to e7, and knight now e to d5. He captures there, I capture with the other knight, moves away the bishop, and now I felt like my position is quite comfortable. Black needs to be very accurate to hold this position precisely. Now, the reason for it is my knight is a better piece than the dark square bishop. Now, we can easily see, let's say if f5 and position gets open, then this bishop is going to become active, but I'm gonna try my best not to let that bishop open. All right, so I go rook a7. Now, yes, that is a threat, but he can simply block it with bishop b7. I did not want to allow trading this bishop for the knight and going for opposite colored bishops. So I moved my knight back. He goes queen b6. I move now queen to a1, trying to take control of the a5. He castles. I go queen to a5, offering queen trade. I believe now he should trade, but he did not. Bishop b6. And after capturing on b6 and bringing the other rook to a1, now I have a very comfortable grip on a5. Only open file in the position. He goes rook to b8. I go bishop to h3. Now, both my rooks are in the game. This knight is ready to jump on d5 whenever this bishop moves away. The only thing now that would make my position great is trading light squared bishops. That would be a dream scenario, right? Imagine if we could just trade these light squared bishops off the board, then we would be left with the dream knight versus a bad bishop, right? So I'm trying to go bishop d7 here. He goes to rook b7, not allowing bishop d7. Now I take there, he takes with the bishop, and I go rook to a7. Maybe bishop d7. Computer is suggesting that bishop d7 would be even stronger. If he goes there, now maybe I press that pawn, but now he can go d5. What if I go to rook a7? Apparently that's where the big advantage is. Maybe bishop f6, knight c4, bishop e7, and simply bring the king over. Okay, this looks quite comfortable. Probably like getting bishop back, knight e3 or knight b6, and then somehow get on d5, but it's still going to be grind. This is not going to be super easy. So rook goes to a7. Now he goes h5 here, bishop to d7, and bishop to h6. So he sacrifices a pawn, technically, to trade this dark squared bishop for the knight. He sensed the danger of it. Now, if this knight is allowed to stay on d5, that piece is going to be a very powerful one. All right, so he wants to get it off the board, and this was the critical moment where I could have actually converted here. Very strong idea. Rook to a5 would win a pawn. Now the point is, black should take here, but after trades, this b5 pawn is lost basically, because if you go b5, then b4, excuse me, rook goes to b5, pinning this bishop deadly. Next, bishop c6 coming up, white is winning. I did not see rook a5. Rook a5 is a very crafty move, winning a pawn, and white is basically playing for two results there afterwards. Instead, what I chose to continue with, because from far away I was looking at this line actually. Bishop takes b5, he takes on e3, I take back, bishop takes e4, now discovered attack on my bishop, but I noticed this idea, bishop to c4, attacking the f7 pawn, and when black goes to d5, I can tuck this bishop back to a2, not on b3, because then either he can play c4 or take on d3. When you take on d5, then bishop takes c2, for example. Okay, and pawns going to be equal after capturing the f7, so most likely this also ends up in a draw. So I figured that should not be winning for me, so I moved bishop to a2. He goes bishop to f3. I go king f2, attacking that bishop. Black moves the bishop away to h1. Apparently, the precise move here was bishop going to d1, and then when I take on d5, rook takes b2. And yes, I'm going to capture that pawn on f7, but after he moves away the king, c2 pawn is also going to be lost. So pawns are still going to be equal on the board. Now, he played bishop to h1, did not find this idea of bishop d1, and now I played bishop to b3. Why? The b2 pawn is under attack, and I'm trying to set up rook a1 to win the bishop on h1. He goes rook to b6, finds a very crafty move actually to, I would say the only one. Otherwise, he has to give me the pawn here, or he's gonna lose a bishop. So he goes rook b6. Now, if I go rook to a1, he's gonna go rook f6 check, and then when I move the king away, he's gonna move the bishop away. Apparently, this is still better for me, but only a little bit. Still, it's not so clear how do I win a material here. So what I did on rook b6 was going for c5 pawn, rook to c7. Apparently, this was the key moment to get the advantage. King g1 would have been very crafty, attacking the bishop first and then going rook c7. So I had the right idea, but the wrong execution, and we'll see why. Now, point is, after e4 here, I can take the pawn on d5, and if you take on d3, I take on f7 check first, intermediate check, because if I take on f3, he can capture on c2, and I'm actually lost here, rook b2, and since my king is on the 1st rank, I cannot avoid the check and promotion. So After e takes d3 though, I can take on f7 with the check. You have to move the king away, and then I will take the pawn on d3. And I'm a pawn up. If you take here, I'll take on g6, increasing advantage even more. So king g1 would be very nice, and I think that was my biggest chance in the game to win this and win the entire thing. as we'll see. So rook takes c7. He finds this very nice idea, e4. Now attacking, or kind of attacking my d3 pawn. And if I take on e4, he's gonna go c4, and now my bishop gets very uncomfortable. So I probably will have to sacrifice a piece here. This guy will be hanging bishop takes c4. This is definitely not what white wants to see on the board. So what I decided to do is take on d5. He takes on b2, and now I take on f7 check. King goes to f8, and then I take on g6 as well. He takes the pawn on c2 with the check, and I move the king away to e1. Now he took rook h2. At this point, we're both under minute. Again, with the no increment at the clock, that is very little time. So this is a severe time scramble for both of us. All right. So after rook h2, I very quickly took on c5, and then we played this position a little bit. I thought I was a pawn up, so I should have some chances, but he was able to neutralize my extra pawn quite easily. And computer also says that this is 0-0, basically. Very little chance of making progress. And I was playing faster actually, because I think I had 15 seconds left on the clock. He had 30, maybe. So, you know, if you go under 10 seconds, it's very easy to flag. I'm pretty sure that a lot of players would go for flagging in those situations. Wink, wink, Daniel. All right. So last chance here to play for the win would probably be d takes e4. And what I didn't notice was that after bishop f3, I win that bishop with rook f7. Man, he has to find the only move here, because otherwise I'm gonna run this pawn, and it only needs 1, 2, 3 moves to promote. All right. So if he doesn't find the only move, which is rook to g2, it's not too difficult when you think about it, but it is also not easy to find under seconds. So whether he would have found this or not, that is something we'll never know. But yeah, with rook g2, like, he's still able to make the draw basically here, because rook g3 then takes on e4, and I don't think it is possible to win this 10 seconds versus 20 seconds. All right. So 4 points out of 5 games. That was the final result. Then Andy Woodward actually beat Jeffrey Xiong in the last round. So he ended up winning the tournament with 4.5 points out of 5 games. Had I won this game, we would have been tied, but I was not able to, and I ended up tying for the second with Jeffrey and 2 other players, and I believe we won $21.25 per person. All right. Overall, fun game. I will be playing another over-the-board tournament, but this time with 1 hour time control for the entire game. I hope you enjoyed this. If you haven't subscribed so far, what are you doing? All right. Take care. I'll see you in the next one.